Lena Moreau was a world-renowned ballerina, praised for her grace on stage. But when her husband, Daniel Reese, a wealthy financial advisor, filed for divorce and ended up brutally murdered days before the final hearing, the spotlight turned from performance to suspicion. As secrets unraveled and a twisted obsession surfaced, the perfect facade of their glamorous life shattered, revealing a chilling truth no one saw coming. Lena Moreau was born to dance. From the age of 4, her feet seemed to belong more to the stage than the ground. Raised in a quiet suburb outside of Boston, she trained relentlessly at the city's top ballet academy. By 17, she had already performed with international companies and gained a reputation for her discipline, beauty, and fierce ambition. Her name soon became synonymous with perfection, her every move on stage a testament to years of pain, sacrifice, and determination. Fans adored her. Critics respected her. Fellow dancers feared and admired her in equal measure. It was during a charity gala in Manhattan where Lena first met Daniel Reese. He was handsome, confident, and powerful, the kind of man who commanded attention without asking for it. Unlike the artists and musicians Lena usually encountered, Daniel came from the corporate world. He ran a boutique financial firm that catered to elite clients, managing millions for celebrities, athletes, and CEOs. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, there was an immediate chemistry between them. Their whirlwind romance caught the attention of tabloids who dubbed them the power pair of culture and capital. 10 months later, they married in a lavish winter ceremony at an estate outside Aspen. Snow fell gently over the white canopy as Lena walked down the aisle in a custom silk gown. To the outside world, it looked like a fairy tale. Inside, however, tensions had already begun to simmer. Daniel's demanding work schedule clashed with Lena's performance calendar. While she was on tour in Tokyo or Paris, he was hosting clients in New York or flying to conferences in Dubai. Their time together became brief and strained. The romantic evenings turned into cold silences. Compliments became criticisms. Daniel was practical, focused, and emotionally reserved. Lena was sensitive, intense, and needed constant reassurance. Small disagreements grew into daily arguments. He disliked her unpredictable hours and obsession with her craft. She accused him of being distant and unsupportive. Jealousy flared when Lena began rehearsing closely with a younger male dancer. Rumors began to swirl, first among the staff, then in the press. Though nothing was confirmed, Daniel's trust in her began to wither. Lena tried to hold on to the life they had built. She continued posting cheerful pictures on social media, masking the growing void behind their smiles. In interviews, she described her husband as her greatest supporter, though behind the scenes they barely spoke. Eventually, Daniel moved into a separate bedroom, citing work stress. Friends noticed Lena's energy fading, her performances losing some of their former magic. She began missing rehearsals, something unheard of for a dancer with her reputation. Then, quietly and without warning, Daniel filed for divorce. He did it through his lawyer, sending the papers to Lena while she was mid-tour in Vienna. The timing couldn't have been worse. She had just received news she'd be headlining a global ballet production. Instead of celebrating, she sat alone in her hotel room, staring at the document that threatened to destroy everything she had worked so hard to build, not just her marriage, but her identity. Lena returned to New York less than 24 hours after receiving the divorce papers. The media had already picked up the story, plastering headlines across gossip sites. Ballerina beauty left behind. Finance king dumps stage queen. Cameras followed her from the airport to her apartment, and though she wore oversized sunglasses and kept her head down, the pain on her face was impossible to miss. Inside her high-rise loft, the silence was suffocating. Daniel had already moved out, taking most of his belongings and leaving behind only a few furniture pieces and cold memories. The absence was louder than any argument they'd ever had. The days that followed were a blur. Lena consulted with attorneys, spoke to her publicist, and tried to maintain some semblance of routine. But the truth was clear. Daniel wasn't just walking away from their marriage. He was attempting to walk away with most of their wealth. Hidden in the divorce filings were plans to divide their assets unevenly, citing financial contributions and personal agreements that Lena had never seen. It appeared Daniel had been preparing for the split in secret, possibly for months. Investigators later discovered that he had opened a personal account in another state and funneled more than $2 million into it over time. He also purchased a luxury condo under a trust name, clearly intending to start fresh without her. What angered Lena more than the betrayal was the coldness with which it was executed. Daniel didn't call. He didn't explain. The man who once held her in his arms on stage after a standing ovation now treated her like a business transaction. And then came the final blow. Rumors surfaced that Daniel was seeing someone new. A former flame from his college years. A woman named Meredith who had recently moved back to the city. A few discreet photos showed them having dinner together at a rooftop restaurant. Nothing official, but enough to sting. Lena's world, so carefully choreographed, was unraveling. Her behavior became increasingly erratic. She skipped press events, fired her longtime manager, and began drinking more heavily. Paparazzi caught her stumbling out of a gallery opening, her mascara running. She looked like a ghost of the woman she used to be. Meanwhile, Daniel pressed forward with the divorce, showing no public emotion. His lawyers pushed for expedited hearings. Lena's team pushed back, accusing him of financial misconduct. Then, in a surprising turn, Lena moved back into the townhouse she had once shared with Daniel, alone. She claimed it was still legally half hers, and she had every right to live there. Neighbors reported seeing her come and go at odd hours. One said she was often seen pacing on the balcony, smoking cigarettes, though she had never smoked before. Another said she was spotted sitting for hours in the living room, lights off, music playing softly in the background. A week before the final court date, Daniel failed to show up to a scheduled legal meeting. His assistant tried calling, but there was no answer. By the next morning, the world would know why. Daniel Reese was found dead in his townhouse just before sunrise on a quiet Tuesday morning. The discovery came after his assistant, growing concerned about his silence and missed meeting, contacted the police. Officers arrived at the property around 7 a.m. and noticed no immediate signs of forced entry at the front. But the smell coming from inside was undeniable. What began as a welfare check quickly turned into a full-scale crime scene. The townhouse was still and cold. Inside, nothing looked overtly disturbed until they reached the master bedroom. There, Daniel's body lay on the bed, covered in a blood-soaked sheet. The scene was brutal. He had been stabbed multiple times in the chest and abdomen, the wounds deep and deliberate. Blood had soaked into the mattress and spattered across the nearby wall. The attack had not been quick or clean. It was personal. Crime scene technicians quickly got to work. There were no clear fingerprints on the murder weapon, a large kitchen knife taken from the downstairs drawer, but bloody shoe prints led from the bedroom to the back door. It appeared the killer had entered or exited through the rear of the house, avoiding the security camera at the front. Outside, in the small backyard garden, officers found a single glove discarded in a flower bed. It was leather, black, and stained with something that looked like blood. At first glance, there was no evidence of a robbery. Valuables were untouched. Wallet, watch, electronics all remained in place. However, when police compared a list of Daniel's belongings, they noticed a few items missing. One was a luxury wristwatch Lena had gifted him on their second anniversary. Another was a framed photo of their wedding day. Most peculiar of all, a pair of monogrammed cufflinks, also from Lena, had vanished. Detectives began reviewing surveillance footage from the nearby neighborhood. One camera, perched on a home across the street, had captured a shadowy figure approaching Daniel's residence around 11:40 p.m. the night before. The person wore a hoodie, their face hidden, their walk strangely deliberate. The footage was grainy and offered no clear identity, but there was something familiar about the posture. Investigators noted that the figure moved with a kind of precision and balance, almost like a dancer. Naturally, suspicion turned toward Lena. Her history with Daniel, their ongoing divorce, and her recent instability painted a troubling picture. She had motive, emotional volatility, and enough knowledge of the house to enter unnoticed. Police brought her in for questioning. Lena appeared calm, even detached. She told them she had spent the weekend at a wellness retreat in upstate New York, but when officers checked the guest list, her name was nowhere to be found. Cell phone data later revealed her device had pinged near Daniel Reese's townhouse the night of the murder. Despite the circumstantial evidence, it wasn't enough for an arrest. There were no eyewitnesses, no direct DNA matches yet, and Lena denied everything. Still, detectives left the interview with one unmistakable conclusion. She was hiding something, and the glove found in the bushes might hold the key. The investigation into Daniel Reese's murder intensified as forensic teams worked to extract every possible clue from the evidence left behind. The glove found outside the townhouse was sent for DNA testing, and within days, results came back. Traces of blood were confirmed, but only a partial DNA profile was recovered. Surprisingly, it didn't match Daniel, and more importantly, it didn't match Lena. The glove had a small tear along the inner seam, and under the microscope, forensic analysts discovered tiny skin cells embedded in the lining. The profile was degraded, but investigators were confident it belonged to someone close to Daniel. While the lab work continued, the police dug deeper into Lena's recent behavior. Her social media accounts had gone silent. Close friends, once eager to support her, were now reluctant to speak publicly. One former colleague from the ballet company confided anonymously that Lena had become obsessed with the divorce and often ranted about Daniel ruining her life. She had even suggested that he owed her his fortune, his reputation, everything. Still, obsession didn't equal guilt. Investigators needed something more concrete. Then, Lena's former housekeeper reached out. She had worked for the couple for 3 years before being let go just a few months before the murder. She said she'd kept quiet out of fear, but now felt compelled to speak. According to her, Lena had received several anonymous letters in the weeks before the divorce filing. The letters were hateful and graphic, filled with threats against both her and Daniel. Lena had dismissed them as crazy fan mail and burned most of them, but one had been stuffed in a drawer and forgotten. The housekeeper had seen it. The surviving letter was recovered from the townhouse. It contained chilling language, references to Daniel's infidelity, warnings that he would pay for what he's done, and crude suggestions about how Lena should handle betrayal. The handwriting was printed in block letters, likely to disguise the author, but the paper itself was the clue. Investigators traced it to a boutique European brand, sold in only a few high-end stationery stores. One of those stores kept purchase records, and one customer stood out: Jeremy Kessler, Daniel's longtime assistant. Up to that point, Jeremy had been considered a background figure in the investigation, cooperative, quiet, seemingly devastated by his boss's death. But when detectives revisited his interview tapes, they noticed subtle inconsistencies. He claimed he hadn't seen Daniel in person for 3 days before the murder, yet a text on his phone suggested they had met for lunch the afternoon prior. Surveillance footage later confirmed that meeting had taken place. A search warrant was issued for Jeremy's apartment. Inside, officers found a small box containing correspondence materials, including more of the same European stationery. They also found a pair of black leather gloves identical in style to the one left at the scene, and a drawer containing newspaper clippings of Lena's performances and interviews, some dating back nearly a decade. Suddenly, the investigation took a sharp turn. Lena was no longer the only suspect. A new figure had emerged from the shadows, one whose obsession might have turned deadly. Jeremy Kessler had always existed on the periphery of Daniel and Lena's world. As Daniel's assistant, he was discreet, punctual, and completely unremarkable, or so everyone thought. He managed Daniel's schedule, handled travel arrangements, and often acted as the go-between during tense moments between Daniel and Lena. To most, he was just a quiet professional, but investigators now suspected something much deeper. What initially seemed like loyalty was beginning to look more like fixation. As police delved into Jeremy's digital history, a disturbing pattern emerged. He had followed Lena's career long before she ever met Daniel. Years of archived browser searches revealed Lena's early performances, obscure interviews, even blog posts from her ballet academy days. He had commented on fan forums under anonymous usernames, defending her from critics and praising her performances with unsettling intensity. His obsession had been brewing long before he was ever employed by Daniel. The messages Jeremy had written to Lena, disguised as hate mail, were designed to instill fear and paranoia. He hoped to manipulate her into distancing herself from Daniel, to make her believe she was being watched, hunted even. But when she failed to react as he hoped, he redirected his frustration at Daniel. According to psychological experts consulted by investigators, Jeremy's behavior fit a classic pattern. Idolization turned into possessiveness, then rage. When police brought Jeremy in for a second interview, his calm exterior began to crack. Presented with the evidence, the glove, the stationery, the conflicting timelines, he grew defensive. His story shifted multiple times before he finally broke. In a quiet confession, Jeremy revealed the full extent of his actions. He had learned about Daniel's affair weeks before Lena did. The betrayal enraged him, not because Daniel had cheated, but because it threatened Lena's image, her stability. Jeremy believed Daniel was toxic and destroying the woman he idolized. The night of the murder, Jeremy waited until Lena was away from her apartment, then used a copy of Daniel's townhouse keycard, something he had created months earlier during renovations, to enter undetected. He didn't plan the murder in detail, but when he confronted Daniel and the argument turned physical, he lost control. Jeremy claimed he hadn't meant to kill Daniel, only to scare him. But the violence escalated quickly. The knife, the missing cufflinks, the framed wedding photo, all symbolic items Jeremy believed Lena would notice, clues meant just for her. In his warped mind, it was a way of protecting her, punishing the man who had hurt her. With the confession recorded, Jeremy was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The trial moved quickly, and the evidence against him was overwhelming. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Lena, though cleared of any wrongdoing, never fully recovered. The suspicion had already taken its toll. Her career was damaged, her trust in others shattered. She left the ballet world quietly, retreating into a life of solitude. The tragedy became a cautionary tale in elite circles, a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones standing quietly behind you.